Okay, good morning everyone, and good morning to those of you that are watching us live. This will be a 2-hour session. Our aim is to finish on or before 12 o'clock. This is about fundamentals of commercial real estate. May I ask how many of you are agents here? Okay, so probably the first part will be of more interest to all of us, but mainly to agent, and the second part is more about investment. How many of you have been involved in any sort of commercial or selling business, anything to do other than residential? Okay, that's good. So I think what we are going to discuss today is coming from my past 10 years of experience, and probably most of the things that we discuss today, if you're going to real estate school, probably some of the things that we discuss is not there. Unfortunately, there is not much of formal training for real estate commercial practice. There are some courses that you can take, but there is a lot of things that you can only learn on the field. Another thing that I want to tell you about commercial real estate is it is a very specialized field. So within commercial real estate, there are so many different fields. You can be specializing in leasing, you can be specializing in selling. And then within selling and leasing, there could be leasing of retail space, there could be leasing of office building, there could be leasing of industrial unit, and then there could be a specialization in sale of those different type of properties. The successful agents that focus in commercial real estate, they try to specialize. They are not everything for everyone. Even, for example, the other aspect of commercial real estate is selling businesses. When you sell a business, I'm sure you have seen agents advertise, they could be just selling hotels or motels. They could be just selling gas stations. They could be just selling restaurants. And then even within restaurant, you will find some people specializing just selling certain type of restaurants. For example, just Subway, or mainly Subway and a few other franchises. Some of them sell the ones that are not franchised. So if you want to get into this field, it is very specialized. As I said, for those type of specialization, unfortunately, there is not much of formal education. In these 2 hours, I cannot justify to tell you about all those different fields, and to be honest, I don't specialize in all those different fields. In the past 10 years, I will tell you what I have done, and maybe I can share a little bit of what I have done, which is mainly redevelopment, not development, but redevelopment, which we will get into the difference, and office buildings, which I do now, apartment buildings, which I used to do in the past, condo conversion of residential, which I used to do in the past, and condo conversion of office buildings, which I do now. I have not done, for example, well, I had clients for industrial units, but not much of focus or a specialization. So as you can appreciate, this is just a basic to just give you an idea about this aspect of business. If you're an agent, which most of you in this room are, although some people claim that commercial real estate is usually 9 to 5, and it might be true, but you have to also work as hard. There is a lot of people, for example, if you're showing spaces, they could be having their business and they're busy, and they might require you to show you on weekends and weeknights. So as I said, it depends what specialty you have, what type of clientele you're going to target. So before we go ahead, is there any question about what I have said so far? So feel free. I mean, we have, I don't know if Nilo told you guys, we have like 45 people registered. So some of those are watching us online. So there are not too many of you here. That's why feel free to stop me in each slide. We have the time to answer your inquiries. Okay, so to start with, basically this slide summarizes the whole presentation. Commercial real estate, the value of commercial real estate comes from two type of income or two type of gain. One is rental, which is the cash flow income, and the other one is capital gain. And we will open both of these, okay? How many of you have taken commercial, the one that you need for your license? Okay. Let me know at the end of the presentation what you learned today and what you have learned in the school, if there is something new that you learned. Okay, so the part one is income approach. Now, this is not the income approach that you're thinking that you took in school. We will analyze properties based purely on income, okay? And we will go through different type of properties that we can analyze based on income approach, okay? Income approach simply means that people are buying properties based on monthly income that they will have or annual income that they will have, okay? So the question that comes, that why people invest in real estate? These are mainly investors. There are other options. You're familiar with most of those options, such as GICs, which the best I think these days they offer is just a couple of % up and down. It is ridiculous because this is really low. Inflation sometimes could be more than 2%. Bank of Canada's target for inflation is more than 2%. So GIC is an option. It is guaranteed, but it is not something attractive for investors to put their money there. Stocks and RRSPs, which most of us have invested because our accountants, for example, my accountant suggested to me to invest in a stock and RRSP. To be honest, well, RRSP, which is part of a stock, and it was part of Scotiabank. I had an account with them. In 2008 or 9, somewhere there, I invested with my accountant's advice to avoid paying taxes, $20,000. In 2010 or so, or 9 or 10, both of them, it came down from $20,000 to $17,000. Today, I received my statement, I think, about a week or so ago. It is $23,000. So in the past so many years, the return has been not much, and there is a lot of risk involved. It is out of your control. Most of the profit goes to the people that manage those accounts. Whether you make money or lose money, they will charge their management fee, right? And this is out of your control. And of course, mutual funds, and there is a lot of other options. So people that invest in real estate is mainly they're proactive. They want to be in control of their investment. And we will discuss the other reasons that they will do. I think when I presented, by the way, I had another presentation a few months ago, which was about real estate investment. How many of you attended that presentation, which we discussed about real estate investment? I think, Ina, you were there, yes? Yeah. So we are not going to talk about real estate investment today. But I think after that presentation, or any type of presentation when I have about real estate investment, the question, or one of the most common questions that come up, if real estate investment is so good, then why what happened in US, it happened, right? That is the main question. Or I think the other common question related to the question is that if real estate is so good, why some people lose money in real estate? And my answer to that question is that cash flow is king. If you have cash flow, if property is sustainable in the long term, no matter what type of economic cycle or real estate cycle, you will survive. And we will discuss towards the end about this because I will give a practical example of what I mean by this. But the most common mistake, whether you're an investor or an agent, you have to realize that the most common mistake that most investors and agents make is that when they analyze properties, They just consider mortgage payments, property taxes, utilities, and insurance, which shows on their bill. They do not consider property maintenance. It depends on how old this property is or how new, whichever way you want to look at it. They don't consider repairs, they don't consider property management, and they don't consider vacancy. These are the factors that will determine whether you will succeed in real estate or you will fail. Most agents and most investors only consider these top 4, and they forget about the bottom 4. So that is the core issue with real estate investment. Most of you that are an agent, and I'm not talking about this room, I'm talking very general, they just want to get the commission. So when they present an analysis of a property, they just show to the potential investor these top 4. Yeah, this is your property taxes, this is your mortgage payment, this is your utility bills, this is your insurance bill, and then you cash flow nicely. They do not consider that this property needs maintenance. Properties, commercial especially, always needs repairs and maintenance, no matter in what condition. Properties always will have, I say always intentionally because it is guaranteed that it will have vacancy. There is no 100% occupancy. It is very, very rare. So occupancy, property maintenance, some people will not pay you. Some people will just go bankrupt. It is possible. You have to consider, and these numbers that I have shown here, this is just a rough idea, but it is close. I think at least you have to have 20% cushion for the properties that you're investing. Okay? Welcome. Hello. So are you guys okay with what we are discussing so far? Okay, now we will get to the actual presentation. That was just a brief introduction. If you want to know the whole thing about the world of real estate investment, I discussed in detail for 2 hours a few months ago that some of you attended, and it is uploaded on YouTube. You can also watch it on realestateinfocus.ca. Anyhow, so these are the different type of commercial properties. I mean, this one might surprise you, residential, condo, or freehold, but for some people, this is commercial because it is investment. They buy it for investment purposes. So some people consider it as a commercial property because it is investment property. The other type of property that is commercial is called mixed use. So these are basically on the main floor. Usually it is a retail store. On the upper floor it is office or residential apartments. So these are called mixed use. There are some beautiful mixed use that are coming up that on the main floor it is retail and then it is condominium. That is the trend right now these days. There is a lot of new development that is happening is mixed use. That trend seems to be attractive to most consumers to have retail on the lower level and then condos, and actually developers make a lot of money. We will not go into that detail by utilizing the mixed use idea. Multifamily or apartment buildings is basically a big apartment building that is for rental. A strip plaza, of course, we all know where we buy our milk and groceries. That is a strip plaza. Retail stores are some of these outlet retail stores that you mainly buy. It could be Walmart, or it could be some of the other brand names in a retail area. A store with apartment is similar to the mixed use. Office, it could be office building, and it could also be condo office. Sometimes, because I'm going through a condo conversion right now, that I'm converting an office building into condominium, even you will be surprised, maybe I should not name the name of the city because it is recorded. I went to the city officials, and I said, I want to convert this to condominium as a commercial condominium. The guy goes, so you're converting this to condo units, which he meant residential condos. I said, no, I'm converting this to office condos. And he was saying, how is that possible? So even people that are working at city level, they're supposed to be aware of these things, and they're not aware of, because it is not very common. But nowadays, most of developers that build office buildings, they build it intentionally as condo offices. These are basically like a condominium, but it is an office instead of a residential dwelling. Industrial, of course, this is where manufacturing and factories are. There are different types of industrial. Some is, well, the basic category is of two, heavy and light industrial. But even within that, there are different type of zoning which tells you what is allowed and what is not allowed. By the way, each one of these, for example, office condominiums, some of them in some cities, in some zones, they allow you to have even retail on the third floor. And it will surprise you. One of the office buildings that I have, they allow retail in any floor you want. But some places only allow retail on the lower level. Some places will never allow retail. So you have to, when it says office, you have to check with your city for that particular specific property located on that land, what are the uses allowed, which is very important, okay? So if it is office, every office building is not same. Every industrial is not same. So you have to be very careful whether you're leasing for your client or for yourself or you're buying it. You have to go to the city. The type of use that you have the intention is allowed for that property, whether it's industrial or office or otherwise. Power centers are like small malls. Okay. The main difference, well, there is a lot of differences, but the main difference in evaluating a property between residential and commercial is this. If you're analyzing a residential property, ideally you go into the same location and look at the past 3 months history, not longer than 3 months, ideally 3 months. Of course, if you don't have much options, you go longer, but ideally 3 months in this specific area, and then you look at the properties and compare how much it was sold. Now, in the world of commercial, it is totally different. Properties are analyzed based on their net operating income. It has nothing to do, well, of course, they look at the other properties, but what plays major role in analyzing commercial properties is net operating income and what is the cap rate going in that area. And we will talk a little bit on cap rate. So your return on investment, or ROI, is basically the money that you put in and the money that you get back from this property that you have invested is your return on investment. That means you have put down the 100,000. If you're getting 10,000 a year, that is a 10% income on your investment. Now, of course, there is a different variation of return on investment. For example, some people add the principal pay down. Each month that you pay down the mortgage, it is called principal recapture, or PR, which means each month that you pay down the mortgage, that is also added onto ROI. Some people just calculate the cash flow. So there are different variations of ROI. We will not get too much into detail of that. It depends what industry you're dealing with. I want to emphasize again that if you're into commercial real estate, it is a very specialized field. So you have to go and go into that field and be patient to learn by practicing. And there are some specific courses offered, not necessarily just by UREA. There are other institutes. One of them is Real Estate Institute of Canada, or REIC, that they provide some specialized courses for different type of fields in the world of commercial real estate. Okay, I will open up this a little bit by giving you an example. So first of all, let me ask this. Do you guys know what do we mean by net operating income or net income? And the key word is operating. Can anyone help me to understand NOI? Yes?
Yeah. All the operating income divided or subtracted from the income, that's income. All the expenses subtracted from the income, that's income.
Exactly. So basically, to make it very simple, all the income that you receive, mainly it is rent. It could be other things. For example, we have a property in Markham. Bill Canada is renting a tower to have their tower there. That is an income from Bill Canada that they pay as a monthly for just having their tower in the property. So all sorts of income that you receive, and then you take out all the expenses. By the way, expenses, let me refresh your mind by going back to the first couple of slides, is not just the utilities and property taxes and insurance. It is also vacancy. It is also property management. It's also maintenance. You have to consider all those in your calculation. Whatever is left, that is your net operating income. Okay? So, for example, if the net operating income of a property is $100,000, now you will be shocked that the cap rate ranges between 4% and 12% and sometimes even 14%. Cap rate is not something that is fixed. It is the market, the economy, the type of property that will determine what is the cap rate. For example, if it is a nice apartment building in downtown Toronto, the cap rate will be less than 4%. If it is a hotel or motel, rather, in Mississauga, the cap rate will be 14%. The higher the risk, because the risk of running a motel is directly related to travel and tourism industry, the risk is way much higher, and it is impacted directly by what is going on in the economy. The cap rate is way higher. And I will show you in a simple calculation that this cap rate makes a huge difference. There is no one written what is the cap rate, although some of these big commercial firms like CBRE and Avison Young and others, they publish usually quarterly reports that indicate, and you can see what is the going market trend for the cap rate for different type of properties. You can visit their websites. Those reports are for free. They publish it online. They publish it on their website. So if you go on their website, they usually tell you what is going on in the different segments of market, for example, for Toronto area. So the higher the risk, the higher the cap rate. And that will bring down the value of property. I will show you in the next slide that a difference of between 4 and 12% makes a huge difference in evaluation of a property. So, but let's go with this simple calculation. The market value of a property is the income, net operating income, divided by the going cap rate. I'm assuming, just to make it simple, if the cap rate is 10%, we will see in the next slide what determines this number. If you divide this income by the going cap rate, this is how much is the value of that property. Okay? Or reverse of this, to explain it in simple terms, if a property is $1 million, and if the net operating income, and again, let me qualify net operating income. It is not including mortgage payments. This net operating income is before debt, okay? So if a property is asking $1 million and the net income is $100,000, it means the cap rate for that property is 10%. It is just the reverse of what I said here, okay? So, and I think these are very, very simplified calculations. If we go into detailed calculations, we will be sitting here for hours, and I have a lot more to cover. But this is just to give you an idea how this world of commercial real estate works. Return on investment, and again, to simplify it, I'm assuming that the buyer is paying all cash. So by cash, I don't mean they're bringing a suit of money. I mean suit of bag of cash money. I mean like they're not mortgaging and not taking loan from the bank, okay? So if they're paying all cash, this is the formula that how much the return will be on their investment. It is NOI divided by value. And again, let's go by giving actual number examples. With the same property, if the income is $100,000, and I just did this calculation before, and the property value is $1 million, so 10% is the return. Do you guys see this? So in other words, cap rate and return is kind of the same thing. If it is all paid cash, by the way. If it is all paid cash, cap rate and Return on investment is same thing. But these are several other questions that will change this return on investment. As I said before, there is a mortgage pay down, right? So that will increase the return on investment from 10 maybe to 12% or maybe to 15%. Because each month that you pay the mortgage, your principal amount reduces. At the end of 5th or 10th or whenever you pay off the mortgage, that money is for you, right? Credited to you. And what if you don't pay cash? And if you pay 25% down payment, of course, then your investment is not 1 million, it is only 250,000. So your return will go from 10% to 40%, right? Am I confusing you guys? We're all on the same page? Okay. I try to simplify this as much as possible, but you can, of course, there is a factor of appreciation. I mean, the second part is all about appreciation. We will talk. What about the property depreciating? That is a factor actually most investors and most agents do not consider. They buy a property, but 5 years down the road, the value of this property might be less because it needs the roof to be changed, it needs the windows to be changed, it needs a lot of things to be fixed. And the way you can find about this depreciation, if you hire a qualified building audit inspection guy, he will give you an analysis of the next 5 years for that particular property. It is like when you condominiumize a property, they will tell you for the next 5 years how much money you need to run this property. So for example, they will say, in the next couple of years, you need to change the roof and you need $100,000, right? So your return on investment may not stay 10%, it may go down to 8%. Are you guys following what I'm saying? This is a factor that a lot of people do not consider. And you have, in this business, you have to be smart to make money. And there are different type of factors that play a role. It is not as simple as a paper or a calculation or an analysis that a listing agent sends to you. You have to go and do your due diligence. Any questions on this one? Okay. So as I said, the riskier the investment, the higher the cap rate, and the higher the cap rate, the lower the market value of that property. And again, let me give you an example. For example, there is a huge difference between buying an office building and buying an apartment building. Apartment buildings are sold as low as 3.5% cap rate, and office buildings are in the range of 8 to 10 and 12%, right? Because there is a lot more risk with the office buildings. Let me give you an example of these two. If you're buying an office building and we are considering exact same income, if it is a net income of 100,000, because this is a riskier investment, it's an office building, if the cap rate is 10%, the value of that property is 1 million. Okay? We have already done this. If we buy an apartment building, because the risk is lower, the net income is same. It is exactly same net income. If the cap rate is 5%, the same property is valued at 2 million. Do you see the difference in price and how much difference a cap rate can make? So literally the price is doubled by being a different type of a cap rate. And it depends what type of a property. You have exact same income, but look at the difference in cap rate. And this is how properties are evaluated. So you buy an office building and the income is 100,000, and you buy an apartment building and the income is 100,000. You pay 1 million here, you pay 2 million here, just because of the risk factor. Okay, so I think we have been through this calculation, but I wanted to also show that if you pay a 25% down payment, your income goes from 10% to 40%, because now you're leveraging. And this is one of the main reasons that people buy real estate. Because when you buy other type of investments, you have to pay all cash, usually. I mean, of course, there are exceptions. Real estate is one of those areas that banks will give you money and you come up with 25 or 35 and you leverage. And that's how your return on investment goes higher. So how are these cap rates? What are the factors play role in those cap rates? There is no website that you can go and say, by the way, cap rates are not calculated. There is no, cap rate is a market trend. Like today, the cap rate could be 6%, tomorrow it could be 5.5%, and that 0.5% will make a huge difference. So how are these cap rates determined? It is basically market driven, what's going on, but these are the major factors that it plays role. It is the type of property. So as I gave an example, if it's an apartment building, it's 5%. If it is a motel, it is 14%. If it is an office building, it is 8%, somewhere in between. The other factor that plays a huge role, and again, most of inexperienced agents make this mistake, they think buying an apartment building in Toronto area is same as buying an apartment building in London, Ontario. There is a huge difference. Because in primary market, which are major cities like Toronto area, Montreal, or Vancouver, or one of those bigger cities, the cap rates are usually lower because the risk factor is lower. There are more people going to those cities. And then there are secondary cities which are closer to the major cities. If I gave examples of Toronto, it could be Barrie or maybe Oshawa even, or maybe places like Hamilton, not too far from major cities. There is a third tier that it is outside, a couple of hours of drive going out of a major city. So the location of property will affect the cap rate. An apartment building in Toronto might be 4%. The same exact apartment building in, I don't know, Aurelia will be a different cap rate. Same exact building, okay? So the location of the property also, so if you're buying a property, don't be confused. The cap rate in Toronto, if you're evaluating a property, is not same as other city somewhere far for the same type of property. If they are saying that the cap rates for apartment building is very low, it's only 4%, it doesn't mean it is 4% across the board. It doesn't mean it is 4% across Ontario. Okay, it's 4% maybe in Toronto. And the third factor is these following other, which we will go into detail, but I think before I do that, is there any question or clarification, or we are all good? It's an excuse for me, by the way, to drink tea. So no questions? Okay. So we will open up this third feature, which means what are the other things that will affect each type of property, commercial property. So if you're investing in residential, proximity to amenities, it could include from highways to transportation to shopping plaza. Basically consider that when a tenant, residential tenant, although we are talking residential, but this is looking from a commercial perspective. When a tenant is moving to a unit, what are the important factors? That will play a role in a cap rate. So even within Toronto, if your apartment is in downtown Toronto, which is close to everything, there is a different cap rate as opposed to the same apartment building being in a Scarborough, right? It is because of different type of amenities, even within a city. So it is proximity to amenities. School plays a big role because this is residential, and families, when they move to an apartment building or a residential property, their kids is a huge decision maker. The type of ranking some schools have, how far is it from a school? Is there a bus service coming to that property? Those play a role in the value of property. Okay. Of course, this is a factor. This is probably the main factor that got me out of investing in residential properties, because there is a lot of rules and regulations, usually not very landlord friendly, specifically in Ontario, but it is everywhere, but specifically in Ontario. Okay, for a retail, when you're selling or buying a retail property, these are some of the factors that plays role. So what I'm trying to say here, and I hope you guys are paying attention, is that if you're buying a retail property, let's say a strip plaza in Scarborough, there are two different strip plazas, and you're trying to analyze which one is better for your client. If they're both 6% cap rate, it doesn't mean they're both same property. It doesn't mean they're same evaluation. There must be some difference, and these are the differences. It depends how many cars pass by that property. Okay? How much is it visible? Is it on a main street or is it inside a street? Right? And the view of that property, and is there enough parking? So let's say if you're buying a retail plaza for your client, if there is not enough parking and they're both same cap rate, it doesn't mean the value is same. This one, the one that doesn't have enough parking, is not friendly for people to come and do their shopping. It will discourage people, and eventually tenants will move, and it will be a vacant property, so there is not much of a value. Do you guys understand where I'm going with this, right? So the cap rate of a property, even within a specific area, is not just those two, but it is also these other features that makes a difference. For an office property, if it is wired with high-tech, and specifically these days that means if there is a fire optics wire, you know, we have at our homes 20 or 25 or sometimes 30, is it megs or gigs or whatever of speed of internet. In some offices, if there is no fire optics, it's only 6, which is very slow. So the wiring, specifically fire optics, whether it has come to that property or not, makes a huge difference. How accessible, by accessible I mean transportation, and specifically public transportation. Because people know, the employers, the people that run businesses, they know that if this office building is close to a public transportation or a bus coming just down the street, they know they can attract employment. Because a lot of employees, either they don't have car or they prefer not to drive. So if it is accessible, they can attract better quality employees. And common area of that property, of course, makes a difference. When you're looking at industrial, these are some of the factors. It could be exact same, identical two properties in Scarborough and they're industrial. But you have to look at these other factors that play a role. It is the structure of property, how old it is. How high is the ceiling is very important. Sometimes you can find two identical properties, same size, same price, and one is 14 height ceiling and the other one is 18. There is a huge difference. The 18 is more in demand. There is more people that will need to lease the 18 because it can cater to a wide range of needs in different type of industries. And 14 may not necessarily range because there are some forklifts that some people have that's very high, or some of the things that they have to stack an inventory that they have, they need a higher ceiling. So keep in mind, ceiling plays a major role in industrial buildings. How many loading docks it has, how many drive-ins. Do you guys know the difference between loading dock and drive-ins? Can you tell me?
Loading docks where you can bring a huge truck, like 18, things like that, to unload stuff. Drive-ins is like, let's say, oil changing things. You can drive in or something like that.
Exactly, exactly. So those are some commercial properties do not have drive-ins. And some, actually, when you rent it to some businesses, they need drive-ins. So it makes a huge difference. Your commercial property, and you're competing with another commercial property that you're leasing, they have drive-in, they get the client, and you don't, and your property is vacant. Environment plays a huge role in industrial, because some of the industries, you might think that only auto industry is potentially contaminating the industrial unit. There is all kinds of other industries. You will be surprised, such as printing, painting, different type of properties contaminate industrial units. So you have to keep that in mind. And of course, this plays even more role in proximity to public transportation, because a lot of these industrial guys, they want to, the type of employment they attract is usually people that use public transportation. So it is important, plays a huge role. If this property is somewhere inside that they have to walk 15 minutes, it is not very attractive for employers because they know it will be harder to attract employment. So it makes huge difference. I will move on to the different type because I have discussed different type of properties, but I want you guys to also understand that sometimes as commercial real estate practitioners, or if you're an investor, you buy and sell businesses. So there is a difference between buying and selling a property and then buying and selling a business. Sometimes, for example, they might sell a convenience store with the property. Sometimes they might just sell a convenience store, just the business. Sometimes they might just sell the property. So, and then they say you assume the tenant, okay? Do you guys understand the differences? So far what we have discussed is properties. Now we are discussing businesses. If you buy a business, it depends. This is a very general idea, but the way we evaluate businesses is 3 to 5 times of the income. Sometimes, in rare occasions, it could be 2 times, and 5 times is a little bit stretching it. So basically, the example I have given, if you're selling a family pizza store, most of the time they don't income, to be honest, because they are just paying themselves salary. Most of these small businesses that are run by family, most of them do not make money. It is just they pay themselves. It's a family business, so instead of working for someone else, they're working for themselves. But let's give an example. If you're selling a pizza store and the net income after paying all expenses is $10,000, the value of that pizza store is $30,000 to $50,000, depending on the location, depending on the type. Is it a restaurant? How much is the risk? This between 3 to 5 times is depending on so many factors. Where is it is located? Is it in downtown or is it in Scarborough? Is it a restaurant or is it a printing business? So there is a wide range, and we cannot discuss all those different types. And again, you have to specialize and you have to be in the field to understand. This is just a rough idea how businesses are bought and sold. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind, this is a Ontario Bulk Sales Act. It's a requirement. A lot of agents don't know this. You have to know this. There are 3 things that are required if you're listing a business for you to provide to the buyer. The seller is required these 3 things to the buyer, okay? And this is an act. It's a law. You have to do it. You have to provide profit and loss for the past 12 months, okay? You guys know what is profit and loss, right? And that is a profit and loss sheet. If you don't know, or if your seller doesn't know, they can consult with their accountant. They have to provide the balance sheet, which means maybe how much equipment you have, how much liabilities you have that you have to pay to the suppliers that have given you some of the item that is in your convenience store. So if we gave an example of a convenience store, do you own the fridge or you have leased it? The items that are there in a convenience store, from cigarettes and whatnot, is it yours or is it on consignment, and you have to, it's a liability that you have to pay to the supplier. So you have to prepare an asset and liabilities statement. In addition to that, what is included, you have to list all the inventory, all the equipments, you have to list it. So these 3 things are required of a listing agent and the seller to give to the buyer. Am I clear? Yes?
No question. So let's say, conversational second. Let's say I'm interested in a property. I'm a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm interested in a property listed by you.
Okay.
So I can, even though there's no purchase and sale agreement between us, I can still request for those 3 things just to see that is it business.
That's a good question, and I think I will go back to your first example, although this is an example you said listed by you. I have been approached by so many people to list my business or buy a business for me. I don't touch it because it is not my specialty. I usually don't want to deal in something that I'm not very confident. So this is, I refer them to people, or I ask them to call people that specialize in buying businesses. Having said that, and I hope most agents do that, because we should be, whatever we do, we should be competent enough to serve our clients. But having said that, usually they provide these things once they sign a confidentiality agreement, or if you come to me, I will prepare an offer for you, and this will be part of conditions. Some people do not want to disclose all those things to everyone. So either you have to sign a confidentiality agreement, which they will provide that this will be just for you and for your you to review it, but it's not for everybody. Okay. But if they are serious to sell and if you're serious to buy, I'm sure you can get it. Okay, and on the topic of selling businesses, you have to be careful that when you're buying a convenience store or a pizza store, remember you're also buying their lease. So if they have 5 years left, then you have to go with that lease. You're assuming that lease. By the way, if it's a good location, and it's a very hot location, and there is only 1 month or 1 year left to their lease, if you're buying it, please remember that the landlord could potentially kick you out of that location. So some people, they know that the landlord is thinking of moving them out, so they sell it a year or two before. The business is very attractive. You're making a lot of money for the first few months, and then the landlord comes and says, we have a big plan for this place. We are building condominiums, so please go out. And then you have paid a large sum of money to buy that business, right? So be careful about the lease. It is important. You can sometimes negotiate with the landlord and say, or you can talk to the seller that I will move in if my lease is extended for 10 years or whatever you want, right? And then you can talk to the landlord. The other thing you have to remember is franchise. If you're buying a pizza store, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you can just bring down the sign and you can put up your sign and change the name of Pizza that is making a lot of money to your ABC Pizza. That's not possible. When you buy a store, when you buy a business, you also take the franchise. So you have to understand there is a lot of complex stuff involved here. You have to get lawyer involved. But you should know that you're buying a business with the franchise, with the lease. Okay, it's not just a business. And on that note, you also have to keep in mind that if you're buying a property, you make sure, as I said earlier, that the zoning allows for the type of use that you have. If there is a restaurant right now and you're opening another restaurant, you might assume that they will allow your restaurant, but maybe not, because the zoning is only for takeout. There are little chairs here and there, and you think this is for seating, but actually it is not. Maybe they are just violating the zoning rule and the use of the property, or it is allowed just few chairs. Now you're buying that unit and you're thinking, I will move in with my own restaurant. The next day the city officials will come and knock on your door and say, this type of restaurant is not allowed. Yes, it was a restaurant before, but only for takeout. For seating, you have to get a different type of use. So the use, do not assume, as an agent or as an investor, whichever you're in this room, you have to go to the city and make sure that they allow your type of zoning. Okay, and that's why I emphasize this is a specialized, and it's not difficult. It is just that you have to focus on one type of property. Okay, and if an agent is claiming to know all different type of commercial properties and businesses, I can tell you confidently it is impossible. They cannot know. If you want to be served best, or if you want to make money, if you're a real estate agent, please specialize in one type of these different type of business or commercial real estate. The other thing is, it is not just the use. For some type of running businesses, you need a license. For example, if you're buying a daycare, now the license is with the existing owner. You have to apply to get a license, and they need to qualify you. And you have to have certain qualifications, and there is a criteria for you to be qualified. So don't assume that you can just buy a daycare and then you can run it. You need a license to run that business. Okay, we will move on to a couple of more slides, and then we will have a short break and come back for the second part of the presentation. One of the things that as a commercial I thought you guys want to know is commercial leases. Basically, if you're leasing for your client, or if you're an investor and you want to lease for your business, these are some of the terms that you will come across. These are some of the basic terms. The world of leasing is huge, and there is so much involved. We are not going to go into those, but just the basic things to know. There is something called TMI. This is, if you're living in a condo, similar to your condo fees, similar, except in condo fees, there is no taxes, property taxes. In this one, they have the property taxes, the maintenance of property, and the insurance. So it is somewhat similar to your condo fees, but this is for a commercial property. They also sometimes call it common area maintenance. This is not common. Some of these terms are from US too. This is mainly what in Toronto and in Ontario they use, TMI. There is another one, especially this is more common in if you're renting a space inside a mall. It is called HVAC, which is for heating and cooling. There is a different charge for that, and they might charge you for this other than TMI. Tenant improvement, this is a term that you will come across. Basically, if this is a unit like this, and I'm renting you this unit, you want to bring your office, you might want to be divided into 4 pieces because you want to have 4 different offices, right? So that is a tenant improvement. For that, is it landlord paying that tenant improvement, or is it the tenant paying? Or if the landlord is paying, usually they pay it, and then because the tenant might not have the cash to come up front to do the improvements, the landlord might pay and invest in that tenant improvement, but then they divide it in the term of the lease. So let's say if they spend $100,000 to do this, if you're signing a 10-year lease, each year approximately $10,000 you will give from your lease extra. So if your lease is $10, it might go to $11. You guys understand what I'm saying, right? Okay, so different type of rents that you should, these are some basic things, by the way, that you should not be confused. There is a basic rent and there is an additional rent. Now the basic rent, let's give an example of this unit that we are sitting. The basic rent might be $10. The additional rent is the TMI, but it is not just TMI, which is tax, property tax, maintenance, and insurance. It could be signage, it could be advertising, especially if you're inside inside a shopping center. Their additional is so many different things. They charge you for people walking around, for advertising, for so many different things. That this additional rent sometimes could be more than basic rent. The basic rent might be just $10, which you're paying. The additional rent is to maintain and bring business to you. Okay, so what is the gross rent? Gross is what comes out of your pocket is the basic rent. So let's say $10, and then the additional rent, which might be $15. So your gross rent will be $25. That's how it is calculated. And let's assume if the size of this room is 1,000 square feet, so that will be 1,000 multiplied by 25, which is 25,000. That is per year. Then you divide it by 12, then your monthly rent will be approximately $2,000. Am I clear? You guys are following me, right? So that's how it is calculated. Now, there is also, this also makes a difference. There is a difference between usable area and common area. Now, the usable area of this unit, let's say, is 1,000, but which means we are using it. The common area is, of course, the washrooms, the corridor, the elevators, the lobby. Those are all called common area. The way you're going to pay rent is not based on 1,000 square feet. You will be paying the 1,000 square feet plus your proportionate share of the common area. So you will not be paying out of your pocket just 1,000 square feet, but you will be paying maybe 1,100, because it depends on the size of your property. You will be paying for that common area. So rentable area is calculated your unit size plus the share of the common area. Is everyone following me, or there's a question? Okay, so if this unit is 1,000 square feet, you're not paying for 1,000 square feet for sure. You're paying more for that, more than 1,000 square feet, because you're using the common area. And there is a standard called BOMA. They set the standard for the common area. It's an organization, and they have changed few times for the past so many years. Okay, now this is the most interesting slide, and then because we are excited about this slide, we will take a break after this. And this is more of an interest for agents. This is a general idea. If you're in residential, I mean, usually the commission is 5%. I mean, these days, well, it used to be 6%. Nowadays, let's say it is 5%. Some people offer as low as 3%. So what I have listed here doesn't mean it is written in stone. This is just to give you an idea what are the commissions for commercial real estate. Usually for leasing, if you're leasing, let's say an industrial unit, you as a listing agent charge 10%. And half for the first year, by the way. The remaining year is usually 5%. So the first year is 10% of the term of the lease. The remaining is 5%. Of course, this 10% and this 5% is divided between you and the cooperating agent. So usually you will see listings that the first year lease, you will receive 5% of that lease. So let's give that example of 25,000, let's say. Well, by the way, it is not calculated off of additional rent. It is just the basic rent. So if your basic rent for the whole year is $10,000, your commission is $1,000 for the first year. Now, if this term is a 5-year term, for the next 4 years, your commission is not 1,000 but 500. So 1,000, 500, 500, 500, 500. If you add all those, it will be 2,500. That's how much your commission is. Now, out of that 2,500, probably you have to pay half to the other agent. Okay? But usually, commissions are more than 2,500 because the size of units are usually bigger, but that's just an example. Now, there is a difference. If you're renting an office, it is usually the cooperating agent gets $1 per square feet. It is not by the size of, it is not percentage, but rather it is just per square feet. So it is $1. So if this is 1,000 square feet, you will get 1,000 for the term, for the first year, 1,000 for the second year, and so on for the term of 5 years. If it is a 10-year, you have to negotiate with the landlord. Some landlords just pay maximum of 7 years. Some landlords pay maximum of 5 years. Some landlords, they pay even the whole 10-year term. So if you're lucky and if you're renting 1,000 square feet and the term is 10 years, you might get like $10,000 from that small space as a commission. Okay? But for the listing agent, it's a little bit lower. If you're selling a business, it is usually 10%. So let's give an example. I will come to that before. This is just the last point. If it is if you're selling that pizza store and it is 50,000, your commission is 5% for 10%. And again, this varies. If it is a brand name and if it is a $5 million restaurant, of course, you will not get 10%. But this is just a general idea. Remember, all these numbers you have to share with the cooperating agent, and usually it is half of this, which means half goes to you and the other half goes to the other agent. And your question?
For office leasing, you said you will get $1 per square feet, and the agent listing agent is 35%. So
yeah.
the owner will pay $1.75 per square.
Yes, yes, ideally. But some owners only pay 80 cents per square feet. 75, 75, it depends. I'm just giving you ideally. The same way in residential.
I'm asking because you have buildings and you want to lease it.
Sure, I will pay you $1, only you. You had a question?
No.
Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Back to the condo conversion.
Okay.
Is there a principal difference between residential condo conversion and commercial office condo conversion in terms of the rules you have to follow, the level, the standard of the units you have to maintain, or any other regulation?
Sure. And those of you that are watching us online, there is a question from one of the audience here that what's the difference between commercial and residential condo conversion? And if you guys have any question, you can call the office number 416-510-3000, and they will bring your question to me. because we will be going for a break soon. Anyways, coming back to your question, yes, there is a huge difference. Most cities and regions, they are not very keen on converting apartment buildings to condominiums. You have to meet certain criteria. The most important one is the vacancy rate. In most cities and regions, that vacancy rate should not be lower than 3%. Some places like Toronto, they don't actually allow at all condo conversion. And the reason they allow this because they don't want to bring down the inventory of affordable housing. You know that since 70s and 80s, there is not much of apartments buildings built in Ontario, actually across Canada, because before that in 70s and 60s, it was a federal government policy to help to build apartment buildings. So you see most of these buildings are from 70s and 80s. And after 80s, there was not much built because the policies of federal government changed. There was not much of incentive for apartment developers to build apartments. Instead, now they build a lot of condominiums because there is a lot of money in that. So having said that, the governments and the cities know that there is not much inventory coming up for residential tenants. So therefore, they're not very enticed to do conversions. Of course, it is part of the planning. They might do it, but there is a tougher criteria. The most important criteria is that the vacancy rate for that city or for that region should be high. If it is too low, let's say 1 or 2%, it means there is not much room for tenants to rent places. They may not allow you. The office or commercial, which includes office, industrial, they don't care about those things. There is not too many criteria. Of course, there is a criteria of the formal application, and you have to provide a lot of documents that is required, which is similar. Condominium reserve fund studies and building studies, all those things are similar. But the criteria to allow you to do it is a little bit different. The qualification is a little bit different. You might face a lot of challenges in residential conversion because most tenants will not be happy because they might think you're kicking them out of their unit. But in a office or commercial property, they might not have objection. Actually, some of them, if you approach properly, they might be happy because if it is condominium, it might be better quality of common area. So it is easier and way much faster. Okay, so can we go for is there a question?
I just had one question about the size of the individual condos.
For which one? Right. Not really. Usually it is unit, and those units have to be measured. It has to be proper units. Maybe this will be one unit, but individual offices is not. It has to be considered a proper unit. There is no minimum size, but it is per unit. But because if you do condo conversion of each of those offices, it will be a big headache. You have to sell each one of this, and city may not be very happy you doing each office as a condominium. It has to be a unit, yes.
And also the charge per unit, so it may not be
feasible. Yeah, yeah. Okay, it is about 11:15. How many minutes of a break do we need? But enough so that you guys don't come back and sleep. We have not too much time and a lot to cover. So is 5 minutes good enough, or is that short? Okay, so we will see 11:20.